Got it. User error. Okay, good morning, everybody. I show that it is currently 9 a.m., so we will go ahead and get started and call this MetroPlan meeting for Wednesday, July 7th to order. I want to remind all board members to please silence all their electronic devices that they have on their persona. In addition, please, I'm asking everyone to ensure if you're going to speak, please turn on your microphones. That's the little talking icon. If your light is red, that means your speaker is on. Once you finish speaking, if you could please turn it off, because I believe there's interference if we have more than a certain number of people with their microphones on. Lisa, if at any point you can't hear somebody, please speak up, let us know. That way the minutes could be properly recorded. I have two opportunities to in this meeting for public comment. Public comments on action items appearing on today's agenda are heard before we get to the action items, and public comments of a general nature are heard near the end of the meeting. I will first recognize the online attendees. Anyone who is online and wants to make a public comment is asked to complete an electronic speaker card. Each speaker has 2 minutes to address the board. Speakers should use the raise hand feature on the Zoom platform, and you will then be invited to unmute your microphone to speak. In-person speakers will be called next. Each speaker should fill out a speaker's card located at the table as you enter the boardroom and give it to Lisa Smith. Speakers must state their name and address for the record. People who wish to speak on other items will be acknowledged in the same way under the item 13. It's now time for the Pledge of Allegiance. I've asked Commissioner Ortiz if he could lead us in the pledge.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Ortiz. Okay. Once again, I want to welcome everybody back to the MetroPlan Orlando boardroom. It's a pleasure to finally be able to be meeting in person, and that we have a good turnout for this first person meeting since March 2020, despite the inclement weather that Elsa, wanted to come visit Disney. So Mayor Demings, you should have uninvited her. So not only is this our first in-person board meeting in 16 months, it is a week earlier than normal. I wanted to thank all board members for adjusting your schedules this month to allow us to have the board meeting 1 week early. This was done to accommodate some local government budget hearings. The July board meeting is always critical for us as we approve the Transportation Improvement Program, also known as TIP. Thank you for making those adjustments. It's exciting to hear that Congress passed a $715 billion transportation and water bill last Thursday. I want to remind board members that the current federal transportation bill expires on September 30th. The Senate will return on Monday, July 12th. There is much work to be done on this still. Okay, another announcement, again, new AV equipment. There are several board members and committee members who are in the boardroom this morning for the first time this year. You will notice that we each have a monitor in front of us. This is part of the new AV system installed earlier this year. I hope that you were able to come in a little early this morning to have staff provide a brief explanation of how to navigate the system. There's also an instructional sheet at each seat, this morning. Please remember to keep your microphone on mute unless you are recognized to speak. Do we have any questions on this new audio equipment before we move on? Okay, that's good. It's pretty self-explanatory. So next, we'll go ahead and move on to Mr. Huntman for his announcements.
Good morning, Chairwoman Janer and board members. I also want to welcome everybody back to the MetroPlan Orlando boardroom. As Chairwoman Janer mentioned, it's the first time that we've been here in 16 months. It's been a long time. But I want to thank you for adjusting your schedules to allow us to have this meeting early for the July board meeting, and especially for venturing out this morning in some bad weather. My comments this morning will be brief. I do want to mention that the National Association of Regional Councils held their annual meeting from June 14th to the 17th. And the NARC staff did a great job of accommodating everyone virtually. Topics of particular interest to us generally focused on reopening that everyone's going through following a pandemic year. And also a lot of discussion on the transportation reauthorization. The NARC Executive Directors Conference and Board Retreat is now scheduled for September 26th through the 28th, and that is scheduled to be a live event. Then the other national organization that we're very active in is the Association of MPOs, and they are scheduling their annual meeting, a live event, again, October 5th through the 8th. I continue to work with the DOT, Secretary Perdue and his staff on stimulus funding and receive regular updates on that. And then as Chairwoman Janer mentioned, the House did pass their version of a transportation reauthorization along with some water infrastructure last Thursday, $715 billion total. With the Senate coming back on Monday, or scheduled to come back on Monday, there will be a lot of activity on this over the next several weeks. And so I will, as I receive information from our partners in Washington, D.C., that is NARC and AMPO, I will certainly provide that information to the board. But there are some interesting features of at least what the House has passed, having to do with what they call high-performing agencies, and that includes local governments as well, as far as expedited project delivery, being direct recipients of federal transportation dollars and so on. All good things in our view. So I'll keep the board posted on that as I learn more. The executive committee would like to do a polling, not today, but over the next few days to find a date in August where the executive committee can come together to start talking about legislative priorities already for the 22 session, which will be early. So we need to start thinking about that and coming together in August. So we'll be polling the executive committee on that. A couple of staff recognitions. I don't think that either one of them are here, but Eric Hill was selected to serve on the Hillsborough State Attorney's Office Community Council. So we appreciate Eric's involvement there and his willingness to serve his community. And then Laura Bauk, who works with Eric on TSMO activities, has been selected as a scholarship recipient of the TSMO Academy. It's something that Eric has been through and speaks very highly of it. So it's an honor for Laura to receive that. You'll notice this morning that you have supplemental folders at your seats, something that we always did when we were meeting in person that you've not seen for a while. Items included this morning are a letter from Department of Economic Opportunity addressed to Chairwoman Janer, just notifying us of their review of our TIP and finding it consistent with all of the local government comprehensive plans, kind of a check the box kind of thing. And then there are also letters of support in there for your information for 3 additional RAISE grant applications that have been submitted. These are from the city of Orlando for 2 great projects that they've asked for a letter of support, and then one from Seminole County that we provided a letter of support. And so those 3 letters accompany one that we've already provided and you received a copy of last month for Osceola County's Neptune road project improvements. So that makes a total, at least to my knowledge, of 4 RAISE grant applications that have been submitted from our region. Chairwoman, that completes my announcements this morning.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Huntman. It's now time for me to recognize Secretary Purdue. Secretary Purdue, do you have any announcements or report for us this morning?
Good morning, Chairwoman Gaynor. I do not have a report this morning. I'm obviously here and available for questions. We do have a presentation on the agenda later for I4 Beyond the Ultimate, so looking forward to that.
Okay, looking forward to see that. Okay, moving along, we will now have roll call.
Bates, Bonilla, Booth,
Here.
Constantine,
Here.
Gomez Cordero,
Here.
Delari,
Here.
Demings, Dyer, Fisher,
Here.
Good, Janer,
Here.
Moore, Nelson,
Here.
Ortiz,
Here.
Siplin, Smith,
Here.
Trace,
Here.
Uribe,
Here.
Woodruff,
Here.
Zimbauer. Madam Chair, we have a quorum. And as a reminder, when you are not speaking, if you could just press the button to turn it off, turn up your mic off.
Okay. Mr. Huntman, it's now time for our agenda review. There's no changes to agenda. Wonderful. We'll move on to our committee reports. First is our Municipal Advisory Committee, and we have Councilmember Trace here.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and fellow board members. The MAC met last week on July 1st, and like the MPO board, this was our first 100% face-to-face meeting in almost 16 months. We had some good attendance and a action-packed agenda, as we do today. On our agenda, we had approval of our virtual workshop meeting minutes and ratification of the board action items from November 2020 through June 2021. These actions were formalized the MAC's work while we were operating in the virtual environment. We approved FDOT's emergency amendment to the current CIP for the Cross Seminole Trail Connector and Links Capital Grant for buses. You all right? We also recommended approval for the new TIP and prioritized project list as presented by MetroPlan Orlando staff. We also received 2 informational presentations. I believe we're getting both of them today. The first was from staff on their successful annual traffic signal retiming program. And we heard the status update from DOT about the I4 Beyond the Ultimate project. Our next meeting is September 2nd in person here in the boardroom. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Trace. If I could ask all the speakers to please make sure their microphones are mute. So if you have, if you see the little red light, that means your microphone is active. So unless you're speaking, if you could please mute yourself by pressing the little speaking icon in the middle, on the lower part of your screen in the middle. So our next report is our Community Advisory Committee. And do we have Ms. Albardi with us today? Oh, okay. I didn't think you looked like Ms. Albardi.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and members of the board. It is truly good to see you here today. I am Marianne Horn, the staff liaison to the Community Advisory Committee, and I'm presenting the report today because neither the chairwoman nor the vice chairman was able to be here. So on June 23rd, the Community Advisory Committee met in a virtual workshop format for the last time. Members reviewed an emergency FDOT amendment made to the TIP and reached consensus on recommending approval of the draft Transportation Improvement Program and prioritized project list, which are before you today. Several CAC members expressed an interest in serving on our new pedestrian safety working group, although some requested more information. Members heard presentations, as Councilman Trey said, on traffic signal retiming and I-4 Beyond the Ultimate. And the CAC is looking forward to its first in-person meeting on August the 25th. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, on to our Technical Advisory Committee, Mr. Muhisen.
Good morning, Madam. Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and members of the board. The Technical Advisory Committee met on June 25th for the last virtual time. As well, we reviewed and discussed action items on today's agenda, including the following: ratifying the emergency amendment to the FY 2021-25 TIP, also approving the FY 2022-26 TIP, and finally approving the FY 2027 through 35 prioritized project list. We had Technical Advisory Committee members volunteer for the pedestrian safety working group, and volunteers came from the city of Orlando, as well as city of St. Cloud, also from Osceola and Seminole County. We also heard presentations on the I-4 Beyond the Ultimate project. Another presentation was on the FY 2019-20 through 20 traffic signal retiming program. And our next meeting will be live on August 27th. This concludes my report, Madam Chairman. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Muhisen. And if you could mute your microphone, then we'll move on to the Transportation Systems Management and Operations Committee, Mr. Jameson.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and members of the board. The Transportation Systems Management and Operations Advisory Committee met on June 25th. Like the other committees, this was workshop format, but will be the final workshop format with us returning in person on August 27th. We will continue to have Zoom option available for the public, but all attendees must be in person to be part of the quorum. The following items were reviewed and discussed with consensus on each item. We had our May 26th TISMA meeting minutes. We also discussed the FDOT request for the 2020-21 through 2024-25 TIP to be amended on the emergency basis, which includes the Cross Seminole Trail connector from Church Avenue to CR 427, and also the capital grant for the Lynx buses and bus facilities. And then we discussed the fiscal year 2021-22 through 2025-26 TIP, and the 26-27 through 35-36 prioritized project list. We also had staff request and receive volunteers for the pedestrian safety working group. There was consensus on each of the items and nothing was asked to be forwarded to the board as comments. We did have one presentation from staff on the MetroPlan Orlando fiscal year 2019 through 20 traffic signal retiming program. And that was an informative. I believe it's also coming up to this committee. And that concludes my report, Madam Chairwoman.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move along to our public comments on our action items. Again, first I'll recognize the online attendees. All online attendees were asked to complete an electronic speaker card. Each speaker has 2 minutes to address the board. Speakers should use the raise hand feature on the Zoom platform, and you will be invited to unmute your microphone to speak. Next, in-person speakers will be called. Each speaker should fill out a speaker card again as you locate on the table as you enter the boardroom. Speakers must state their name and address for the record. People who wish to speak on other items will be acknowledged in the same way under agenda item 13. Kathy, do we have anybody, or Lisa, that wants to speak online?
There are no raised hands on the attendees side.
Okay, and Lisa, do we have any members of the public wishing to address the board?
No, ma'am, we do not.
Okay, thank you very much. So we will go ahead and close the public comments on action items. And our first order of business is the consent agenda, items A through B. Commissioner Delary.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve consent agendas A and B as presented in the book.
Second reading.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Delary with a second by Commissioner Uribe. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Okay, we're going to move on to our other action items. The first action item is to ratify the emergency amendment to fiscal year 2020-2021 through 2024-2025 tip. Mr. Caskey.
Okay, good morning, Madam Chairwoman and board members. This amendment request came up in late May after most of our committees already met. And this had to be amended into the state TIP by a June 10th deadline. So FDOT requested this amendment be processed on an emergency basis. So our board chairwoman signed the resolution approving this request on May 27th, based on MetroPlan's policy for processing emergency TIP amendments. And this request includes moving part of the construction funding for the Cross Seminole Trail Connector project from the existing project number to a new project number, so that the city of Longwood can provide staff services for the project under a LAP agreement. And then the other project involves adding FTA grant funds and local matching funds for links to purchase 6 new electric buses for the limo system. And you all have the information in tab 2. So with that, we're asking for your ratification of the amendment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Caskey. Any questions for Mr. Caskey? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved, you reading?
Second, Delory.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Reeve, a second by Commissioner Delary, and this is a roll call vote.
Booth,
Aye.
Constantine,
Yes.
Gomez Cordero, Delary,
Aye.
Demmings, Fisher,
Aye.
Janer,
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Ortiz.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Trace.
Yes.
Uribe,
Yes.
Woodruff.
Yes.
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you very much. Next is the approval of our fiscal year 2021, 2022, 20 through 2025, 2026 tip. Mr. Caskey.
Okay, well, last month I gave you all a preview of the new TIP, and there's a link on the fact sheet that you all have in tab 3 where you can review the draft TIP. And we had our virtual TIP public meeting on June 21st and had really good attendance. And on the slide there, it just shows the comparison of the attendance we had at last year's public meeting compared to this year's meeting. And last year we had 51 public attendees with a total attendance of 74, including the panelists. This year we had 80 public attendees with a total attendance of 105. So we were very pleased with the turnout. And there were quite a few questions and comments that came up at the meeting, and I listed some of the main topics on the slide there, such as the need to shift more funding away from major capacity highway projects to alternative transportation modes such as transit and bike ped and complete streets and so on. And we had several questions and comments about the need to expand bus and Sunrail hours of service. And there was some discussion about the need for more electric vehicle charging stations and for greater mobility equity for people without cars, and what Lynx is doing to help address that issue. And we included a summary of these comments in your agenda packets. And we had 2 polling questions at the meeting. The first was, which of these best describes your transportation personality? And there were 4 options, such as the debater, the advocate, the logistician, and the adventurer. And most people saw themselves as the advocate of having a vision for the perfect transportation system and working together to come up with solutions to achieve that vision. And then the other question was, where should Central Florida increase spending the most to improve our transportation system? And the vast majority of votes went to improving the transit connections between the bus and rail systems. And we had a group of panelists from local jurisdictions and agencies that helps us answer questions during the meeting, which was very helpful. And we really appreciate their participation. So with that, unless there's any questions, we're asking for your approval of the new TIP.
Commissioner Reeve, you have a question?
Yes, thank you for that update. I do have a question, because this is something that I see a lot, is that people have these great ideas and they want to see mass transit, but do they really understand the concept of length and funding? Because we always hear that, we need transit, we need connectivity, we need more routes, we need all of this. But I always feel that the deficit comes with the general public is the lack of understanding how much it costs and how long it takes. So I'm just curious at all that type of conversation take place during this.
Not specifically, but that's always, the issue that we deal with all the time with surveys and so on, that people want, more transit and longer, bus and rail hours and so on. But as you mentioned, it doesn't, they don't really comprehend what, the lack of funding. We need a dedicated funding source for transit and that sort of thing. So that's always the issue that we come up against, is that people, don't realize how much it costs for these systems to operate.
Chairwoman Jana.
And a point of clarification, we are on item B,
Thank
that's
you.
on tab 3. I know that the presentation over here says that we're on item C, so I didn't want to confuse anybody. We are on that item B, which is approval of the 2021, 2022 through 2025, 2026 TIP. So any other questions for Mr. Caskey? Commissioner Delory?
Madam Chairman, I don't have a question for for MetroPlan staff, but I have a comment I'd like to make. And first of all, if that's okay,
Of course.
I'd like to acknowledge the Turnpike folks being here today. And I see behind someone in his Nicola Laurie, the executive director of the Turnpike. So good to see you again.
LaCory.
Corey, I'm sorry. I know I'm trying to see you. So. I also want to thank your staff for meeting with me several times, as well as our county staff. The issue that I've been working with your staff as well as our staff with is the second item in the bullet sheet that we have, which was the Florida Turnpike Expressway project, which is the major capacity project for State Road SR 417. And I just want to thank you for that. And what I just want to do, just for the record, is just acknowledge some of the emails that have been back and forth, if that's okay, to our county staff, and one in particular from Carol Scott, which is the Turnpike Planning Manager. And in that email that she sent to John Dredge regarding, and it was sent to us yesterday, which was July 6th in the afternoon, and basically said, and I'm paraphrasing, is that in this email towards the bottom of it, it talks about how you're going to make every effort to talk about the information regarding the Lake Jessup nutrient reduction and flow enhancement projects. And as indicated in various meetings, you're going to be moving that project to the top of the list for consideration for compensation treatment. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. And I'm hoping that someone would acknowledge that on the record as well from your department, so we can immortalize that in our meeting here today. And I'd like to at least acknowledge that and have someone from your staff acknowledge that as well.
Okay, is that it?
That was it.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner
And
Delory.
I'm thinking that Turnpike is acknowledging that they sent that letter as well. There's no not saying that on the record.
Any other questions?
Chairwoman Jenner, I just wanted to follow up on Commissioner Uribe's question about people's understanding of funding and their requests for more service. I think you'll be hearing some more about that with the first presentation when we get to that item on the agenda, having to do with our market research study.
All right, seeing no other questions, this is looking for a motion.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, Delari, for the approval of the fiscal year 2021, 2022, 2025, 2026 TIP as presented here today.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Delory, a second by Commissioner Ortiz. This is a roll call vote as well.
Booth,
Yes.
Constantine,
Yes.
Gomez Cordero,
Yes.
Delory,
Yes.
Demmings,
Aye.
Fisher,
Yes.
Janer,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Trace,
Yes.
Uribe,
Aye.
Woodruff.
Yeah.
Motion carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Moving along. We're now moving to our item C, which is the approval of the fiscal year 2026, 2027 through 2034, 2035. Sometimes it's amazing to be even like saying that number, right? 2035. Mr. Lepp, and information for this item, this is tab 4. Go ahead.
Good morning. And it's funny saying 2035, but believe it or not, our plan goes all the way to 2045. So we're even 10 more years further out. And as a reminder, so the project priority list is that bridge between our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is that 2045 plan, that's 25 years out in the future, and our Transportation Improvement Program, which you just approved right now. And that's our 5-year plan. All projects have to have that direct connection from our 2045 cost feasible plan, meaning that we have to determine that it is cost feasible first before we can start advancing into the Transportation Improvement Program. But a new element this time around is our old prioritized project list mirrored the 2040 long range plan. So we had that whole 20 years of projects that we were prioritizing and trying to advance. New rules have shortened that. So only the first 10 years that are deemed cost feasible can advance into the tip. So we have a 25-year plan, 10-year set of priorities that will go into the next 5 years. And this is all consistent when we were developing it through the goals and objectives and performance measures that were established in that plan, as well as the funding policies for the TMA funding for those off-system complete streets, sidewalks, bike ped, TSMO, and transit activities. Just as a refresher, here are the performance measures, the 27 measures that went into the development of this prioritized project list. And it's all performance-based planning, meaning that we use these performance measures based on the direction and the working group of local government staff, as well as our staff, determine these are the measures that are most important. And as they start having these issues, those points start raising these projects up, and those will be our priorities that we are moving forward. So it's all mathematically based. The original is looked at just a neutral weighting, and as a recommendation from the board from the last meeting, we added some weighting in there for safety and for pedestrian vulnerability or vulnerable roadway users, excuse me. So here's how the weighting, the top ranked was safety and security, with access and connectivity as a second rank, going all the way through down to health and environment. And these all match our goals and objectives from our plan. So they go along with those performance measures, which correspond into the new prioritized project list. Some of the other programs, which I just wanted to highlight that came out of the plan. So we are still continuing some of those signal timing and special study programs that were always on our priority list that will take off the top. For example, complete streets and data collection, as well as that 1 million a year for that signal retiming program that we have been continuing over the past 10 years. School mobility, we are still continuing that program. And then there's a couple new programs we've added within this long range plan, looking at safety emphasis, pulling some funds out to get some more safety projects moving, as well as sidewalk gaps. A new program looking at a larger area of all of the sidewalk gaps and how we can start getting those funded, especially on the federal aid system. And also looking at ACES demonstration. We have a new list within our prioritized project list that's going to look at off-system construction assistance. This is new coming out of our MTP again. Now it's looking at supporting our local governments on those roads that we didn't have that mechanism with the TMA funding because we have a $4 million cap, and it's for complete streets and sidewalks and bike ped and transit, nothing to support a widening or a larger capital expense like a Shingle Creek Bridge going over the Osceola Parkway, or even some widening of roads. So this new program is looking to assist the local governments complete the design and the right-of-way and phases. This program will be there to assist with that construction, which is the larger fund. So just as a recap, some of our top priority projects that are in this list, 1792 still remaining at our top with 535 and State Road 434, all looking to move into forward for additional funding. Again, this is our off-system list. These are the projects that have been submitted by our local government partners for consideration. This program doesn't start until 25 and 26 because that's the first year of our MTP, but this will give us time to work with the staff to make sure that the funds are committed for those initial phases. And at the top of the list, based on the priorities, are Old Lake Wilson and 532 Canoe Creek. Our TSMO and ITS improvements, a lot of them are in downtown Orlando, but also Canoe Creek goes to the top again as we're looking at some of these top priority projects coming forward for TSMO and technology improvements. And then our complete streets, looking at Central Ave down in Kissimmee, as well as Church Street and Old Dixie Highway are the three projects that have been the top and kind of remained at the top that we'll be looking to advance over this next year into the transportation improvement program. And then bicycle and pedestrian project, the Little Econ Phase 3 has been going on. Construction should be entering into the work program over the next couple of years as the top priority, as well as continuing to get those gaps of the Shingle Creek Trail that are still identified in Osceola. And then our transit projects. At the top of the list, we're looking to still support links with those capital expenses and transit asset management as one of our performance measures that are required. The top priority premium transit project is still that Sunrail Phase 3 from OIA to Meadowwoods Connector. And then 3 and 4, which are still highlighted, are still important for links to expand that system, is getting a northern and southern operation base to ease that capacity problem that they have at their current maintenance facility and to help expand the system. Those are the priorities as we came up for the performance-based planning prioritization process. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but we're looking for approval of this prioritized project list to start working on to the next tip next year.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Lapp? Okay, I'm looking for a motion then.
So moved, Uribe.
We have a motion by Commissioner Uribe. Second by, oh, Commissioner Booth. I'm sorry, Commissioner Booth, didn't recognize your voice there. Okay, all in favor, please state aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion does pass unanimously. Next, we do have some information items for acknowledgement.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to accept the information items for acknowledgement.
We have a motion by Delory. Okay, second by Constantine. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Next, we'll move on to our other business presentations. First, we have a presentation of research results from the Metroplane Orlando 2021 Public Opinion Survey. And we have some Dr. Sarah Vega with us, as well as Ms. Cynthia Lambert. Welcome.
Members, I appreciate your time today, and I'm very excited to present the results of our 2021 Regional Transportation Survey. It's very much in line with everything that we've been talking about today, so I think I'll be able to provide some data and statistics that back up a lot of what many others have said today. My name is Dr. Sarah Vega, and I am the founder of Summit Survey Research based out of Jacksonville, but I graduated from UCF with a PhD in sociology, so know the Central Florida system well. Go Knights, right? So I appreciate your time today, and it's a pleasure to be back. I served on the 2013 iteration of this survey, so it's nice to be working again with MetroPlan Orlando. A little bit about the survey. We had a total number of respondents of 3,055. To give you a snapshot of what that might feel like if you go across the street to the Walt Disney Theater at Dr. Phillips Center for Performing Arts, that theater holds 2,700 people. So if you can imagine going through and talking to each of those people, plus another 355, that's the total number of people we spoke to. Not just people. These are people from every zip code in Orange, Osceola, Seminole, make up the geography, matching the census, matching census statistics on gender, race, ethnicity, age, income, and education level. So we were sure to gather respondents who reflected the populations that we were interested in. We also used industry best practices by using an online panel through a company called Qualtrics, kind of like SurveyMonkey. I'd argue even a little bit better. So just over half of our respondents came from that online panel, and that's a company that has access to people that we wouldn't have had access to. But in addition, we had 1,200 respondents from the public version of the survey. That was a link that lived on MetroPlan Orlando's website, but was disseminated really impressively through the communications team at MetroPlan Orlando. So I want to thank Cynthia Lambert, Marianne Horn, and Leilani Bayonga for their efforts to get this survey in front of a very wide variety of people, as well as thanking the board and their jurisdictions for promoting the survey to their constituents. The survey was open and just closed in June, so this data is very up to date and was available in English and Spanish. Here's just a brief list of who we were able to, and the MetroPlan Orlando communications team was able to get the survey in front of. There's a little example of a tweet there that posted for all of the county libraries. So if we think about people, for example, who go to the library to use internet, that's a different kind of person than would have just been able to access the survey, for example, through the panel or through the MetroPlan Orlando website. So I appreciate the efforts made to get the survey out. So diving into the results, we ask a general satisfaction question that we have asked for many years. MetroPlan Orlando has asked for many years. Generally, just the key takeaway, there is room for improvement. So they're at the 35% mark, average, poor, or failing. We've got 56% of respondents saying things are average, poor, or failing. That number was 77% in 2015, so it has improved slightly. But the takeaway here is there is room for improvement, with 44% on a positive note saying things are great or pretty good. It is helpful to know that respondents do feel there's room for improvement, that there is also a need for increasing transportation funding through increases in taxes, fees, or both. And that stat has stayed the same for many years. So it's nice to know that people, yes, feel there is improvement needed, but that increased funding is probably going to need to accompany that. For those of you curious to know what that looks like across Orange, Osceola, Seminole, it hovers around that 62% of people agreeing. So Orange County residents, 62% agree that funding may need to increase. 59% of Osceola residents agree, and 63% of Seminole County residents agree. There's also, to speak to what was spoken about just a few minutes ago, there is a general misunderstanding of where transportation funding comes from. So we ask people, has it increased, has it decreased, has it stayed the same? And you really could split the pie chart almost equally across 4 topics, the 4th being, I have no idea. So there is general misunderstanding of where transportation funding comes from. So this idea that most people do agree that transportation funding it is going to need to be increased by taxes and fees, along with that misunderstanding, the public may be ready for new proposals for new funding sources in the region. Also of note, and thinking about the federal news that you all just talked about, we have a majority of respondents who think it is reasonable, agree that a mileage tax or a mileage-based user fee, where you pay for every mile you drive, no matter what car you drive, is a reasonable approach, with 52% of people agreeing with that form of a tax. And that number increases slightly to 60% who agree that low-income residents should pay less per mile. So we wanted to get a snapshot of how our respondents get around. So who are we talking to? Is it everybody drives? Well, no, it's not. Sure, they're at the top. There's just 4% of us, in Central Florida who say we never drive. But the takeaway here is that there's a really wide variety of uses of modes of transportation. So people are accessing all forms of modes of transportation. We have 83% of people saying sometimes or often I walk where I need to get to where I need to go, 47% saying they bike often or sometimes. A third of people saying they sometimes or often use Sunrail or Lynx. And if we look at respondents who use Lynx or Sunrail, it was almost half of people. So the takeaway, or scooters, right down at the bottom, 19% saying, hey, sometimes I use a scooter. So there is a variety of uses being made of the transportation system in Central Florida. So we wanted to start our deep dive into the results with a really key takeaway. 96%, so almost every single respondent said, I think planners should focus on pedestrian-friendly communities. It's glaring. As a statistician and as a survey methodologist, that's amazing. Almost every respondent in agreement. Same thing with bicycle-friendly communities. 94% of our respondents say, yes, I think planners should focus on creating bicycle-friendly communities. So we wanted to look at what the top challenges for pedestrians and cyclists were. There was a sense of lack of safety as a key takeaway, and that will sort of come up in a few other findings that we have today. So 36% of pedestrians saying they don't feel safe due to driver behavior. That's a perceived lack of sense of safety, but still, true and palpable for pedestrians. For cyclists, it rises even higher. Half of them do not feel safe sharing the road. And there you have some other challenges there too. I'm not going to be able to have time to talk about it, but we did ask about crosswalk use and some pedestrian activity as far as pedestrian safety signage, some new rapid response flashing beacons, RRFBs, and pedestrian hybrid beacons. We did ask people what they thought they were supposed to do when they came across them as a pedestrian, as a driver, and those full results are in the report. So thinking about this idea of unsafe driver behavior that pedestrians and bicyclists and even other drivers reported, we wanted to dig into that. What does that really mean? So we thought, well, maybe it's just a lack of understanding about the relationship between speed on the road and safety. It's not a lack of understanding. Most people, just about 80%, understand that speed and safety are closely related, where speed increases, safety decreases. So we can sort of nix that as an explanation for why people might be driving unsafely. Well, then we looked, okay, what about what's happening behind the wheel? We asked people, is it okay to speed when roads are clear? Well, a third of respondents across all kinds of groups, these are not just young males, across all groups are saying, it is okay to speed when roads are clear. 12% saying it's okay to text while driving. 12% feels low, but it's not zero. So a bit of room for improvement there, and definitely speaks to, in a measurable way, this lack of sense of safety for pedestrians, for cyclists, and for other drivers on the road. Well, we wanted to dig in more. We wanted to look at, let's look at not just general unsafe driver behavior, but risky, what we call risky driving behavior. These are people driving 10, 15, 20, 25 miles per hour. They admitted to this. We didn't have data on this. This is what they said they do on a routine basis. 19% of people telling us, so that's almost 1 in 5. Yes, I routinely speed. Wow. Okay, well, let's figure out what these people are doing on the road. These people, these risky drivers, 19% of them have more close calls where they were almost in an accident, 9 percentage points more than safe drivers. Okay, just a little bit more. That's not too crazy. What is crazy is we asked the follow-up question, was the close call your fault? 56%, so over half of them said, oh yeah, it was my fault that close call almost happened. That number is half for safe drivers, around 25%. So close call drivers really, seem to be culprits here. 16 percentage points more agree that it's okay to text and drive, and 35 percentage points more feel it's okay to speed. So these risky drivers are certainly speaking to what pedestrians, cyclists, and other drivers are feeling as a lack of sense of safety. How do we mitigate this? We did ask people, do you slow down when you see a camera at an intersection? Everybody seems to slow down. So there are ways to mitigate unsafe driver behavior. It may just need to be, certainly not, it's not a lack of knowledge, just may need to be increased consequences. So for those on the road, not as drivers, but as transit riders, we asked a lot of questions. There was a lot of rich, open-ended responses in the full report, but we wanted to just give you key takeaways, which was across Sunrail, across links, 2 things continue to come up, and we've heard them already today at the meeting: more frequent service and access to more places. We will acknowledge that results in this survey do affirm and confirm that people do ask for conflicting things. They ask for more stops, but faster bus routes. So there is an understanding that yes, and even in the stats, even in this systematic way of collecting data, there is a conflict in what people want. But there does seem to be an openness. We asked people to increase ridership. We asked people what it would take for them to ride links, to ride Sunrail more often. And a lot of them said, well, we just really enjoy doing it with our kids. We enjoy getting on if it was a little bit more convenient. So it might speak to the idea that there are choice riders out there who are interested in, may have reliable transportation, but are interested in incorporating transit into their daily routines. So when we think about people who do not have reliable transportation, be it transit riders or not, of all of our respondents, 18% mentioned that they missed or skipped a doctor's appointment in the last year due to lack of reliable transportation. That is a large number. That is a palpable number. I know any one of us with all of the privilege and opportunity that we have, missing a doctor's appointment, even if it's just a checkup, that's a really big deal. That's direct impact to your health. And we see this number rise drastically specifically for two groups, American Indian, Alaska Native. For that group, 46% are saying that they have missed a doctor's appointment in the last year. Multiracial respondents, 25%. Hispanic respondents were twice as likely than non-Hispanic respondents to have missed a doctor's appointment. And unfortunately, transit riders, those who often do not have reliable transportation, were 3 times as likely to have missed a doctor's appointment than non-transit riders. So when we think about a system that serves people of all needs, of all characteristics, we wanted to know, we wanted to ask people, what does equity in transportation mean to you? And not in a closed-ended question, in an open-ended space for them to define it themselves. A word cloud is an easy way to spot some common words used, need and access. But when we look at some of the quotations, those definitions really come to life, and we're starting to be able to see for Metroplan Orlando, as you all work to define equity in transportation, what does it mean to residents of Central Florida, Orange, Osceola, and Seminole County? It means accessible for all people of all abilities and languages. Everyone in every neighborhood has fair and equal access to transportation, or they really have no idea and it's a brand new term to them, something to consider. Or the Spanish quote there, any person, no matter their economic standing, can use public transportation. So this is a good first step in working to define equity in transportation for Metroplan Orlando. And it's exciting to see where this goes next. We also asked what characteristics they think, the respondents think, that planners should focus on and prioritize. We asked, should each of these be considered a lot, a little, not at all? And we find physical ability and cognitive ability way at the top as things that planners should consider when looking to plan for the future. Another new exciting topic we asked about were electric vehicles. So here we have some quotes about some reservations about electric vehicles, but overall people are open and interested in purchasing electric. 62% of people said, I'd think about it, I'd consider it. And of those people, 44%, so almost half who were interested in electric, said, I'd consider purchasing electric in the next 3 years. So that's a pretty large number who are at least open or thinking about in the near future, not 10 years and 20 years later, how can I get an electric car in my life? Some of those reservations are things we all have probably heard, but it might raise my electric bill, that people perceive there's going to be a higher electric bill. But of course we know, that might be offset by the fuel costs. For longer distances, I'm not sure how to charge. They're impractical in a hurricane. We might see how that plays out in the future. But just some general, misunderstanding. And if you don't know somebody that has an electric car or you don't have one yourself, it certainly is a foreign and very could be new technology that people are not fully comfortable with, but definitely open to. And then finally, we asked some really exciting questions about driverless vehicles. So as a researcher, this was just a lot of fun. I was really excited that I got to be a part of a survey project that we were asking this, because I know back in 2013, that certainly was not on the topic list for the survey. So this is very exciting. So we know, technology has changed drastically, and people know that driverless cars are out there. I think 10 years ago, that would have been not quite the case. So these stats are pretty telling that people are open to driverless vehicles. And again, we looked at key demographics. We looked at age, we looked at race, we looked at income breakdown, and there's really a wide variety of people who are open. It is not just young people, for example. So 90%, almost every single respondent says, yes, I've heard of driverless technology. 30% of those people said, and what I have heard is pretty positive. The national statistic on that is 24% of people who think things are looking positive for driverless vehicles. So Central Florida residents have a bit of a higher, more positive perception of driverless technology. Only 24% of people correctly said the driverless vehicles are allowed to be on the road in Florida. So there's a bit of a misunderstanding there that what the laws are around driverless technology. But a lot of people are interested in trying this technology out, just quote, just for the experience, just for the fun of it. So 62% of people saying, I just want to get in the car and see what it's like. Many other people saying it would be nice to be able to do other things. Or I have eyesight problems and I can't drive right now, but I'd be able to in a driverless vehicle. 60% of people say they'd feel comfortable sharing the road with a driverless vehicle. So again, pretty open, pretty comfortable with the idea. Still, 91% of people say if we're going to have driverless buses, they need to have a human attendant on them. So they still feel pretty strongly about having driverless buses. Okay, that's all right, but they better have, a human to greet me, make sure everything's going okay with the bus. The stat here that we have, the pie chart, it's so interesting and so telling of the time that we are in. So we asked people a hypothetical question about preferences for future daily travel. So what would you prefer? Would you prefer up in the top right that a driver would come take you everywhere? Even that, I'm like, wow, that would be nice, right? So 29% of people selected that. I think that would be nice. Driver would come pick me up, take me where I need to go. The next option, well, I'd like to summon a driverless vehicle. 32% of people saying that. So nearly 1 in 3. Okay, interesting. The next option, a driverless vehicle comes and picks me up, but there's people in the car. It's kind of like a ride share, like an Uber or something. That was a little less popular with 12%. 27% of people saying, none of these options work for me. This is crazy. I'm not into it. Okay, that's a quarter of people. But the interesting thing is if you add the two bottom pieces of the pie chart, that's 44% of people saying, I'm going to get in a driverless car. That's my choice, even when a human could drive me around, or I don't want any of these options. So just really speaking to the fact that driverless vehicles and technology, they're here, people know that they're here, and I think know that it's time to, be more open and interested, at least in the technology, because it is not going anywhere. And lastly, another interesting driverless technology question that we asked, we wanted to know, well, given this idea that driverless technology exists, would you prefer to live far away, outside of the city, and have a driverless vehicle take you in? Or would you prefer to live in a downtown walkable environment? 60% of people, even thinking about a driverless car, taking them in, still want to live in a downtown walkable environment. So I'll leave you with that today. The fact that, we started this conversation with pedestrian and bicycle friendly communities. It's a really big focus for respondents. Yes, they'd like less congestion on I-4 and things like that. But the seeming key takeaway is this increase in safety, but also a wider variety and an openness to new technology, and still a focus on the walkable, bicycle, pedestrian friendly community. The full report is a fantastic read. I hope you all access it. All of the results for every single question in the survey are broken down by county. If you are interested in what your county looks like, all of that information is in the appendix. Cynthia Lambert, who is here, is your contact at MetroPlan Orlando for all of these results. And of course, I am always available to be contacted as well for questions about the report.
Well, thank you. That was very interesting. I'm going to ask Mr. Hutman if you could have staff email all the members of this board, both the full report and the presentation, because some of those graphics and charts are very interesting and really summarize a lot of it for us. So I think that's a good thing for all of us to have. Next does anybody have any questions? Okay, Commissioner Delary, then Commissioner Reby.
Dr. Vega, thank you very much. Very fascinating and well done. Will we be able to pull out, I know you your data is by zip codes, correct?
Yes, we do have zip code for respondents, yes.
Would we be able to pull out of those zip codes the disadvantaged communities?
Yes, that would be possible to
Okay.
look at specifically.
The other one I ask is, there's a big report nationally called Dangerous by Design, and there's hot spots with it. If you go deep into that report, we'll be able to look at the hot spots of your report to see where the Dangerous by Design is issues.
As far as the using the zip code,
Yes,
not in this current report. So in the current report, everything is broken down just by county.
okay,
In the raw data, that is a possibility, and we can have a further conversation about what that might look
Okay.
like to use the raw data to look for hotspots like
okay,
that.
great. And then the last question I have is, I know you're looking at the 3 different counties, and everyone said they're willing to pay more for transportation, which is great. Did we educate the folks in asking that question that they actually pay in Seminole through a 1-cent sales tax? And did we go into any of that at all?
We didn't,
Okay,
no. So that there was not an informative piece there. And if I recall correctly, that misunderstanding of funding for transportation was across counties. So there
Okay.
may be, yes, opportunity there for increased knowledge.
thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vega. For the information. I do have a question. Do you have a breakdown of age, race, and like financial? Because I'd really like to see the correlation of when people talk about paying less for people who aren't financially able, how many actually participated in the survey? Like, so do you have that information also?
Yes, definitely. Transparency is very important in survey research. I think not everybody thinks that. So we have a very detailed breakdown in the full report of all demographics, and where there were key differences across those key demographics, they were pulled out and talked about within the report. So there's not a separate report for what those different groups might look like, but for key differences within the report, there are those stats.
So when you look at household income, you have that broken down. Did you see any kind of more people who were financially more stable as opposed to people who weren't? Was it pretty equal, or do you feel that there was more emphasis in certain areas?
You know where I think so, not to take the leap of looking at transit riders versus non-transit riders, that does not mean obviously that every transit rider is low income, but we saw a lot of differences. And I did mention a few, but in the report, there are even more. The idea of sort of creating a type of person that uses transit, and knowing that they could be lower income, they could have less reliable transportation. We did see a lot of differences where the burden falls on them higher. So if we think of low income participants more likely to use transit, yes, we did see that burden for low income for transit riders across things like they missed a doctor's appointment, things like that.
Okay, and my only last follow-up is, I understand there was a question about, do you understand that it costs? I don't remember, it was a long survey, so I don't remember, but was there, do you buy into actually paying more? Because there's a big difference in, do you understand there's a cost related to it, but do you support it financially? Was that a follow-up to understand if they would pay more to get more transit options?
So the way the question is worded is, do you agree, strongly agree, disagree, strongly disagree, that in order to address Central Florida transportation issues, we're going to need to increase taxes, fees, or both? So that was how the question was worded. And that's what we find, that the majority, 62% of people do agree that yes, but this taxes, fees, or both for my area, not for federal, not for out there, but for me is going to have to increase. And we have seen that across many years. So there does seem to be, at least from this market research and public opinion research, an understanding that even though there's not a clear understanding of exactly what's going on with has funding increased, decreased, stayed the same, there is a misunderstanding there. There does seem to be, over the years, a general understanding that there's got to be more funding. It's almost as if they see that there are a lot of things that need addressed. And the idea that the current funding situation is going to be enough, there seems to be an understanding that it's not.
Thank you.
And I'll just add on to that.
Yes.
if I could just add on a little bit, and for any jurisdictions who might be thinking about pursuing additional transportation funding options. Oh, sorry about that. Is this a little better if I speak up? Okay, great. I would also say one thing this survey did not address that would be really important to look into opinion differences. We did not ask if our survey takers were voters. And so you would want to really make sure that you'd have a good understanding of how your voters feel, which might be a little bit different than your population at large. But as Sarah mentioned, every time we go out into the community, people say we want more, and these things are obviously very expensive. So there is somewhat of an understanding that we have to pay for those things.
Cynthia, I want to thank you for that. I was going to make that point is that you have 62%, but it wasn't a question like, well, are you a voter and will you vote to increase a tax or a fee? Because that's a really huge disparity. You just have this assumption that everybody would go to the ballot box and check, yes, I want to increase, my sales tax so that you can have more transportation. So I know that Seminole, you have that transportation tax. We tried in Osceola County unsuccessfully, although we had similar polling results that people did support, taxes to go up to have better access to transportation and better roads. So you just never know. So I think that different research would have to be done to back up an initiative for transportation. And I'm sure we all know that. We've all kind of been there, done that. Any other questions? This is really good stuff, guys. I wish we had a lot more time. Councilmember Trace.
Is it possible to, I know Commissioner Delary asked about zip codes and kind of locating where some of these problem areas are. The 18% missing a doctor's appointment is just an alarming fact. Is it possible to work with agency partners like Links and then also this organization to market better to those areas for the Access Links program and some of those other tools that we have? And then if there are needs in areas that we aren't really serving properly, just kind of shifting or letting us know as cities and counties, we need to focus more money and effort into this area just to kind of get the data out of that survey and into implementation.
Yes. Excitingly, Cynthia and Metroplan Orlando now own the raw data. So so it will have zip code level and everyone who said, yes, I skipped a doctor's appointment. So then it's just up to you all to parse out the data how you will and how it's useful to you to find hotspots we were just talking about, but specifically where is this happening or with whom, what kind of group, but the geography piece would be really interesting and telling. Yes.
And then we can start targeting funds towards those areas just to help implement. Thank you.
Yes.
Councilmember Trace, I will tell you that being on Links for a number of years, the more transportation disadvantaged you are, so those people that are really vulnerable, the more likely, even though they have like an access link, for them not to miss a doctor appointment is high because they have to make an appointment X number in advance. So if there's a change at the doctor's office, there may not be that leeway to reprogram that right in time so that they could get to it. So even if they have quote unquote access, they're still at a disadvantage. So that's why there's that direct impact between that access to transportation and your health. And this part is a really easy to see because it's a doctor's appointment, but there are other things as well. So that's something that, we just all need to work on. And unfortunately, funding for transportation disadvantages is the biggest challenge, at least that we have at Links, and that keeps going up, but the funding necessarily isn't there to cover all that. But Commissioner Delary, you had another question?
If I may, Doctor, how often do you think we should be doing these types of surveys?
At least every 2 years. Which I think
I'm being
is,
serious. Because I think it's important that we don't drop. I'm trying to make sure, I want to make sure we don't drop the ball. And so
Right.
that's why I'm asking you as a professional, how often you think we need to revalidate not just these questions, put this type of research?
Yes. Yeah, I stand by every 2 years. Every year, my goodness, every year. It takes us half a year to do the project. So certainly not any less than that. But you start thinking about getting past that 3-5 years. I mean, my goodness, your region changes completely. And your population changes very quickly because of what Central Florida is. It's an amazing place where people come and go. And so definitely I'd say every 2 years you'd be happy to
That's
see.
great job security.
Hey, okay. I talk about economic job security and I
That's
think
not
about
why I did it. I'm just-
no, but things will change and you'll see that every 2 years.
Okay, anything else? Ms. Reheisen?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Have you looked in the period that some of those surveyed people have lived in Central Florida, knowing that we have a transient population that probably could help your dissemination of knowledge about the transportation?
Yes, he asked about how long you've lived in Central Florida, and we have asked that in so many previous surveys, and we added so many exciting new topics. It started to get a little lengthy, so we had to make a few cuts in that demographics section, and that was one of the things that got cut because we have such a diverse and transient population. So what does it look like for people who have just gotten here or for people who have lived here for their whole lives and have seen the transportation system change is an important question that we have asked before, and maybe we should pop back on the survey in the future.
All right. Well, see no other questions. We could probably have you here for a long time.
I'd stay all day.
Thank you so much. We are going to all receive a copy of the full report
Yes.
and the presentation. Anything else you wanted to add, Ms. Lambert,
I
before
just
we
wanted
wrap it
to
up?
say we're very happy to come and present to your staff. If you think your staff would benefit from a deeper dive into the survey results, we can not only share the report with them, obviously, but we'd be happy to have a discussion with them and present to them as well. So I wanted to put that offer out there.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lambert. I would be interested if that report, since you do have the data separated by county, that each of us get that. So Osceola County people get Osceola County results separately, Seminole, Orange, et cetera. So since that could be done, that would be a nice way to see it besides the full report, of course, because we want to look at the impact as a region. So thank you. Okay, next, we do have another really interesting presentation today, the FDOT Beyond the Ultimate. And we have Ms. Chacon with us. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Catalina Chacon. I work with the Florida Department of Transportation. I am the project manager overseeing the I4 Beyond the Ultimate project. I am here to give you an update on this project. Okay, today's agenda, I'm going to go over a brief overview on the I4 Beyond the Ultimate. I'm going to talk about the I4 at Sand Lake Road Interchange project update. And then I'm going to talk about how we are reimagining the I4 corridor with some tools that we have right now. I'm going to touch on the extension to the south, extension to the north, next steps, a programming update, and then I'll take questions. So a quick overview on the I4 Beyond the Ultimate. Some of the goals of the I4 Beyond the Ultimate project include increased safety, enhanced mobility. We recognize that I4 is the backbone of Central Florida. So we want to increase connectivity to the community, and we want to support the economy of this community. Looking at a big picture type of view right now, these are the segments of I4 Beyond the Ultimate, the ones that extend to the south or west. So we have 4 segments that came out of the PD&E study. We have segment 2, that is the first segment right after the I4 Ultimate project that's under construction. And then we have segments 1B in Orange County, 1A in Osceola County, and then segment 5 in Polk County all the way to US 27. So as you can see on the table to your right, this is the current funding status of all of these segments. And as you can see, there's only one that is tentatively funded for construction, not until fiscal year 32. So right now we're in fiscal year 22. It's 10 years from now and is tentative. And then the right-of-way funding status is very similar. looking at the north extensions. So we have segment 3 and 4. Segment 3 is the first segment right after I-4 Ultimate in Seminole County. So it starts at around stay at 434 in Seminole County, going all the way to the county line. And then segment 4 is in Volusia County, going all the way to stay at 472 and the land. And as you can see on the table on the right, if we have a similar picture, the funding is a big challenge. And I know that we've been talking about it. So the segment 3 is tentatively funded in fiscal year 32. And the right-of-way is funded in current fiscal year. Now, I want to point out that only 2 segments, one segment in the north and then one in the south, are tentatively funded. And basically what this means is based on FDOT's long-range planning, these segments belong to the SIST system, this Strategic Intermodal System. And it's basically, we work at a 45-year horizon, looking at revenue projections based on today's projections. So this is something that is definitely subject to change. Not until 10 years from now, only these 2 segments are cost feasible. So that's something to keep in mind. And this is kind of like why we are reimagining I-4. We know we got to build it sooner rather than later. I'm going to switch gears really quick, and I'm going to talk about an update on the Sand Lake Road and I-4 Ultimate project. This project is the first interchange right after the I-4 Ultimate project near Kirkman Road. So in Orange County, in the south terminus of I-4 Ultimate. As you all aware, the I-4 Ultimate project is expected to have completion by the end of this year. And this Sand Lake Road project will connect to it. So as part of the analysis that we have been doing for the Sand Lake Road interchange project, we have been analyzing, and we have been, we anticipate some congestion on I-4 in those express lanes. So I-4 Ultimate is proposing to terminate the express lane near that oval circle, right? Or the oval or yellow or oval shown in the picture in the image. And basically, we are anticipating some potential congestion to the express lanes. So how do we mitigate this congestion? We had the Sand Lake Road interchange project with a letting next spring. So what we're doing is we are increasing capacity to I-4 as part of this interchange improvement project. So we are going to be letting a design build project with an estimated construction cost of $208 million. That is going to include the already proposed diverging diamond interchange at Sand Lake Road and I-4, as well as the additional capacity to I-4 to address that congestion that we are forecasting. So we're going to be adding an additional express lane in the westbound lanes only from where I-4 Ultimate ends all the way to State Route 536. So we're working the details on this project. We are anticipating a potential tip amendment that we're going to be working on in the coming weeks. Okay, so now switching gears back to how we are reimagining the I-4 corridor. Like I mentioned on the very first slides, one of the biggest challenges that we have is the funding. So we only had those 2 segments tentatively funded, not until the outer years. And we know that we have challenges today that we need to address today. So we are relooking at I-4. We're doing a value engineering to I-4 based on new tools that we have. So we didn't have these tools 4 years ago when we were doing the PD&E study. We want to revisit the typical section of I-4. We want to see if with new parameters and tools that we have, can we find efficiencies, come up with cost savings ideas, still meet the purpose and need from the PD&E. We want to look at how do we add the capacity to I-4 that we need, with new policy that we have in place. We also want to look at the access assumptions. We have, as there are more express lanes being built in Florida, there's more lessons learned, there's more education. So we want to relook at that and see if it applies, it could be applied to I-4 beyond the ultimate. And then finally, we want to look at the size and cost of the projects. We want to make sure that we're putting a project that the department can be efficient at managing and that the construction industry can actually build it and deliver. So some of the opportunities that we would like to take advantage of include the updated managed lane policy. So this policy basically gives us more flexibility on how to add capacity to I-4. This policy became effective in 2020. And prior to this policy, when we were adding capacity to I-4, we were adding express lanes, period. Now we have managed lanes. Express lanes are a type of managed lanes, but we also have HOV lanes, truck lanes, or we could also look at, do we add general use lanes, not toll lanes? As I mentioned, we have more guidance on the direct connects as well as the ingress and egress points to and from the express lanes. So we want to relook at those elements as well. And we have new parameters. We have more options, more experience, more research when it comes to the separation type between the express lanes and general use lanes. And then, as I mentioned, we want to apply some of our lessons learned and industry feedback, such as the size and the cost of the project. We're relooking at I-4 holistically. We know we got to look at the entire system, but we want to see if we can come up with smaller size projects that can get funded sooner rather than later, and that we can be more efficient at managing, and that the construction industry can build these projects. So what is our evaluation approach? Basically, what we want to do is we want to utilize all of these new tools that we have. We want to maintain the purpose and need from the I-4 PD&E study. Those remain the same. We have to address areas of congestion on I-4. We already identified the right-of-way needed from the PD&E study, and we do not want to go outside this right-of-way with this value engineering approach. So we're definitely going to be staying within that right-of-way that was already defined. We want to provide similar or better, if we can, traffic operations along the I-4 corridor. And we want to come up with the cost savings opportunities. We want to keep in mind that as we go through this evaluation, we're going to have need for reevaluations. So we got to keep this in mind for our schedule. And then we also are engaging stakeholders. So we have been doing this presentation to our local partners along the I-4 corridor. So looking at the I-4 Btu South Extension, we broke this, the South Extension into two segments. The first one goes from State Road 528 to US 192. And some of the key concepts, key elements from our value engineering concept include bringing I-4 mainline at grade. And on my next slide, I'll show you what I mean by that. We also want to look at buffer separation instead of barrier separation between the express lanes and the GULs. We want to look at the access points based on the lessons learned that we have and the more experience that we have building express lanes. And then by bringing I-4 mainline at grade, we might have to relook at the configuration of some interchanges and make sure that they're not in conflict with this new potential typical section. And then we're also utilizing some of the previously identified concepts from the PD&E, like collector distributed systems. We're also preserving some of those concepts into this value engineering concept. So this typical section is what was in the PD&E study. So as you can see, we have the elevated general use lanes. We had barrier separation separating the express lanes and the GULs and the general use lanes. And as you can imagine, this is one of the main reasons why the project is so costly. So what we're looking here is a potential typical section that utilizes the new tools that we have. So you can see the express lane, the buffer separation. We're bringing that everything at grade. And this translates into significant cost savings. We are utilizing the CD system in the westbound direction and the eastbound direction. We were able to capture that traffic with adding auxiliary lanes to I-4 mainline. Looking at the I-4, the other segment on the south, so that goes from US 192 to US 27. We are currently evaluating the alternatives based on those new tools that we have. We are coordinating with Brightline as they have plans to go down to Tampa. And we're also coordinating with District 1, which is the adjacent district, at US 27 and I-4, as well as Turnpike with their Poinciana Parkway extension. So we want to make sure that we're coordinating with everyone so that we are not precluding each other from all of these projects in the area. Looking at the extension to the north, so this is the one in Seminole and Volusia County. We are basically doing the same evaluation right now, utilizing those new tools. We know we have operational needs on I-4, so how do we add the capacity that we need to I-4? We're looking at the interchange operations and see what is needed in ramp terminals as well. And then the goal is, like I mentioned, looking at I-4 holistically, come up with smaller size projects that if funding becomes available, we can deliver and build those projects that build towards the ultimate vision in I-4 BTU. So the next steps regarding this value engineering approach include continue to do our stakeholder outreach. As we progress in our evaluation, we will have more details to share. And we want to receive the feedback to see if it can be incorporated into our project. So we will be scheduling future discussions, and then hopefully as funding becomes available, we will adjust our approach to deliver these projects. And then finally, this is a quick programming update. So these are the projects that are actually going into construction in the near future. So we're looking at, these are all of the projects to the south. So we have the Champions Gate DDI at I-4. It's currently under construction with an anticipated completion in the fall of 2022. We know this will help the congestion in that area. Along with that, we have the next two projects, which is the Ox Lanes between along I-4 between Champions Gate and Sarah 429, as well as the milling and resurfacing of I-4 from the Polk County line to State 417. These two projects are goes with, and the anticipated letting is in August of this year. We also have the Darrell Carter Interchange project with an anticipated letting in January of next year. This project will convert the existing overpass into a 3-leg interchange at Darrell Carter. So we'll open up more opportunities for people to access the area near the interchange. And then finally, we have the Sand Lake Road interchange that I mentioned at the very beginning. It's a design build project that will include the extension of the westbound express lane with an anticipated letting in May of 2022. And then looking at programming update to the north. So these are all projects in Seminole County that are very near completion. We have the E.E. Williamson Bridge replacement, the I-4 eastbound Ox Lane from I-4 Ultimate to Lake Mary Boulevard, and then the resurfacing or repaving of the westbound lanes of I-4 in Seminole County. All of these projects are near completion. We anticipate the completion in the summer of this year. And then finally, we have the Wakaiba Parkway Section 8 project. So this is the interchange of I-4 in Wakaiba Parkway in Seminole County that completes the beltway around Orlando with an estimated completion in spring of 2023. So that is all I have for today. I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I commend you because that kind of information is hard to come by, and that was a great presentation. I hope we videotape this because we need to take that clip, and that's what we have to be passing around to our community. We don't want you to be going all over the place doing the same thing.
I'll be happy
It's
to.
gonna, but great presentation, and I think it's very informative. Commissioner Uribe said something earlier. She asked a question in reference to information and the lack of information going on out there, and I think that's once again present in the society we live today. And this kind of information is paramount. Is the kind of information we have to put out there for people not to be asking so much, but to really learn about what we're doing and how the funding is going in transportation and how needed it is for their participation in terms of supporting this kind of projects. Now more than ever, not only in terms of transportation, but in government, I think we need to make a great effort to teach our constituency about how government works. So we have the full support of in this particular projects. Once again, I want to commend you. And I hope, as I said before, that we recorded this because we're definitely going to use that clip. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I want to thank you for the thorough presentation. I just had a follow-up question, which you brought up, which was Brightline. and how you guys are working with that. So obviously that's been a hot topic for us in Orange County because we want it to stop at the convention center. Have those conversations been finalized? I know we're waiting on CFX and so forth. Or is that more just, do you have both options? Are you looking at one? Any kind of information you can provide, as it's still a moving thing? I mean, FDOT's obviously given multiple extensions on this project until that's figured out. But for us as a county, it's been, quite important.
Yeah, so I can tell you how it relates to I4 Beyond the Ultimate. We are coordinating with Brightline. Like I mentioned, we want to make sure that we don't preclude each other. And that slide that I showed with the potential typical at grade, there is still space for rail on, most likely is going to be on the right side of I4. There are going to be some constraint points, but we have options potentially. How we can still provide the space for a rail will be elevating a smaller section of I4. So that will be, I don't know, I mean, that's just kind of like how it relates to what we're doing when we're looking at I4 Beyond the Ultimate.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Commissioner Delar.
Thank you. Well, you're going to hear a lot of this. Well done. And thank you.
Thank you.
Question that I have obviously would pertain to Seminole County, where we're talking about the expansion of this project going north into Volusia. Where does segment 3 and segment 4 start and stop? Is that really-
Segment 3 starts at 434,
Okay.
where I4 Ultimate ends, and it ends before the bridge. So the
Okay.
bridge is part of segment 4.
That's what I was concerned. I just wanted to know that piece.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next question I have is, in order to do what you're presenting, we're talking about billions of dollars. I mean, that's basically the bottom line. And I think you're doing a great job. But the question I have is regionally, what can we do regionally as a region to position not just us, but your project or your projects on the federal side? Because that's probably where the money is going to come from with this potential of new infrastructure money coming down from Washington. How can we all work together to do that? You have any advice?
So this is what we're doing right now. We're going through this evaluation. We're looking at those tools that we have right now. And then we want to come back to you and say, hey, this based on our evaluation on the new tools, this will be potential projects that smaller size projects that can get funded and relieve those hot pockets on I4. So that's how I envision. We want to partner with you. This is what we're doing. We presented to Sean Shresh, I think we presented to him. So, but yeah, we're.
I know you're working well with all the county staffs of
Yeah.
all 3 counties. I get that.
So that's what we're doing. We're doing this evaluation, and as soon as we have more details and we identified those smaller size projects, we'll come and we'll take the feedback and we'll put it in the priority list to hopefully get funded.
Well, just so that you know, years ago, when this region was trying to get Sunrail to where it is today, the region came together and all funding partners, because there's 5 of them, all went to Washington, DC at the same time. And it did a lot of good. And I think that we should be looking at something like that in the future.
Okay.
That's just my comments.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Commissioner Booth.
Chairwoman, I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask this question, but since she's from FDOT, if you don't mind, indulge me. I'm the newbie here. So something that I see vital to the area, because I travel north out of the Central Florida all the time. And maybe you can speak to it briefly, or maybe you can come back just to me personally or to the board. But is there any work going on getting out of Central Florida? I travel I-75 north quite a bit, and I don't know, I use my Google map all the time, and I can tell you the last 10 times that I have been north, it's been red on Google Maps. And there's never a time, I mean, understanding that not only do we have a large metropolitan population in Central Florida and then south, but we also take in a lot of product and people coming to our area. So is there any work being done? Is it about another corridor, another artery to get out of here?
The short answer is yes, sir. There is. So my name is Kelly Smith. I'm the Planning and Environmental Manager with District 5. So we're looking at all of our strategic corridors, and we do have a master plan on I-75 that we've just kicked off. And part of that is looking at the same approach that Catalina's done on I-4 Btu to make some improvements to those corridors. Our sister district, District 2, is also looking at a PD&E study on I-75, and we're looking to do the same thing on I-95 as well. So this is kind of playing out the roadmap for our other interstates, and then we're also going to be looking at the strategic corridors within our district.
But there is agreement, I guess, with FDOT that there is a huge problem on only having one road that takes you beyond the eastern seaboard out of Florida.
Yes, sir. We are with the master plan approach. We're looking at parallel facilities, either working with the county governments to see if we can get some of the local traffic off. So we're looking at other solutions besides the interstate on those types of master plans.
Thank you. And I only ask because I really think that what this work that's happening is extremely vital to our Central Florida and this service area for our county. So I
Absolutely.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
Well, I certainly agree that I think that breaking it down into more biteable pieces, even though some of those pieces, those bites are still really large, is definitely a good way to go, especially when in applying for grants and things. I think that, if you have this ginormous number, it's very difficult to go ahead and get funding. So I think that definitely bringing it down to these bite-sized pieces is definitely a smart thing that the department is doing. And we certainly appreciate, all the coordination that you had with not only MetroPlan Orlando, but all our local governments as well. So thank you, Ms. Chacon. It was a great presentation. Do you have anything you would like to add, Secretary Perdue?
Thank you, Chairwoman. Yeah, and I appreciate Catalina giving this presentation today, and thank you all for your remarks, comments, feedback. One thing I would like to mention is that, Commissioner Ortiz mentioned getting information out. Catalina is available to deliver this presentation to community organizations or commission meetings or whatever you would need to help educate and get this information out. And to your point, Chairwoman Janer and Commissioner DeLauria also mentioned this, what can we do as a region? Anytime a region begins to speak with one voice and all move in the same direction, it's very, very powerful. And so one of the things that we want to do at DOT is provide you with transportation projects that are very competitive so that you can speak with one voice and can advocate. And so that's part of this effort. And also with our other strategic corridors, we want to find ways to bring that congestion relief sooner. A lot of times our planning horizon is way out in the future, and we're planning and designing the project that's needed for 30 years in the future. But there could be things that we can do for the next 10 years and the next 10 years after that are way more competitive. And so we want to bring that to you as a service and enable you to speak with one voice and advocate. So.
Thank you, Secretary. Yes, Commissioner Constantine.
I have a very technical question that that probably the Secretary would have asked, but he had something else on his mind. But exactly how much money is ginormous?
Anything that starts with a B. How's that?
Because you're a trained CPA, I was just wondering how you came up with that number.
Anything that has more than 6 zeros in it would be a ginormous number.
Thank you for the technical answer. Thank you very
That's my
much.
technical answer to that. Mr. Muhisen?
I have a question for Secretary Perdue. Is there a concerted effort with other?
Could you put on your microphone? It's okay.
Just curious as to if there's any concerted efforts with other DOTs through Florida, since we're to the point of to Commissioner Booth, going north and south and all that stuff. Is there a concerted effort to organize or coordinate the improvement of I-4 with other districts?
Absolutely. That's actually a great question. I'm actually very, very good friends with the District 1 Secretary, OK Nandam, and the District 7 Secretary, David Gwynn. We coordinate very closely. Our teams work very closely together, beginning with planning all the way through design. We have very close coordination with them. We're one team, we're one FDOT. And I'm also good friends with Nicola LaCory from Turnpike. We coordinate very closely with the Turnpike Enterprise. And so, we have a very cohesive, coordinated effort. It's a great question. It's something we take very seriously. And Chairwoman, to Commissioner Constantine's point about ginormous, as you can see, the needs on I-4 are huge. And we're talking in terms of billions. The innovative approach and ideas that the team has come up with, while the needed investment will still have a B on it, we're reducing that
Into chunks.
in chunks of close to $1 billion. So it's really going to make those projects more competitive. So we're very excited about that.
Thank you so much. And we're going to go ahead and wrap up that segment. Thank you again to the FDOT for that very interesting presentation. We'll move on now to our public comment section. Do we have any speaker that has signed up for public comment online? Kathy?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom attendees side at this time.
Thank you, Kathy. And Lisa, do you have anybody that wants to speak in person? I do see one, I think.
Yes, we have a speaker card submitted by Miss Joanne Canellis.
Miss Joanne. And you know the drill, name and address for the record.
Hello, this is John Canales. I live on 324 Claremont Drive, Lake Florida, 32746. Yes, I'd like to have a 24-hour bus and train service, including holidays, weekends, and nights, please. And we need to have this bus stop over at the Country Club Road and Estella Road, and we need to have the bus stop back to the Ovila Boulevard, and where the Big Kahuna swimming pool is, the aquatic facility and gymnasium here, along with the bowling alley too, please. The bowling alley is right next to the swimming place. Okay, you know where that is. Remember that, Constantine. You need to get that. You may need to hurry up and get that in so that no one would get hurt on their feet. And yes, we need that bus every half hour in all of Central Florida, including Seminole County, as well as any other part of Central Florida, please. Okay. Thank you. And we need the there's transportation for people who are handicapped as well. For the people who are mentally and physically handicapped too, so that no one would be stranded there either, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joanne. as
You're welcome.
always.
Because Christopher told me about that. He helped me to do it.
Thank you. Thank you for being an
You're welcome.
advocate.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody. Does there any? Okay, thank you. Are there any other requests to speak? Okay, board, our next meeting is Wednesday, September 8th. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.